Good evening, I'm Matterall. Tonight on Talking in Stations, the monthly economic report for August is out, causing accusations of botting against fraternity. We'll look into that. We'll actually have the leader of fraternity with us later in the program. Also, it looks like mining is moved to high-sec. Is it permanent? We'll find out. An Imperium refinery was the scene of a major fight last night. Dreadnoughts were dropped. We'll look at the kill and battle report. Vale wrestles with two metaliminal storms, as does Providence. And in market news, cobalt spikes. Those stories and more on TIS Today, the EVE Online report. Let's get started. How's it going, Mannix?
It's doing great. Also, there are extended downtime tonight. You can see Eve Twitter account called Eve Status for more information on that.
Oh, great. Thanks for the warning. Okay, the August monthly economic report is out. And the first thing we want to look at is the war showing up on those stats. Over the last 5 months, we've seen the overall destruction value in EVE Online go down from April all the way down to July. And it's popped back up in August, so that's a good trend. Let's open up that report and have a look at some of this stuff here. Total destroyed value by region. Looks like Fountain is on nearly the top of that list, as is the Forge. So what is that? The Fountain matching the Forge in destroyed value?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the first or not, but you normally don't see that in any of the nullsec regions. So that's a lot of destruction in Fountain that's taking place in August.
Yeah, 2.7 trillion. Most of that at the expense of the Initiative and Bastion Imperium members, as that province was destroyed essentially in that month. That beats the Forge, which you can see down here in the bottom right, 2.692, essentially 2.7 trillion as well. That's big news. So the July report, this is interesting. Since April, you have April, May, June, July. I'll read you those numbers. In April, there was 46.9 trillion in destroyed value. In May, the next month, 42.8 trillion, so it was less. In June, 45.7 trillion, a bit more. But in July, 30.7 trillion. So things slowed down dramatically in July. But then August came around and it's popped back up to 38.5 trillion. So it's up I guess it's up 8.5 trillion basically, or 8 trillion. And so if you think about it, what was going on in July, there was a lot of movement of troops, but there really wasn't a lot of actual damage being done to ISK value or stuff destroyed. You didn't see Fountain really destroyed much in July, and a lot of the conflict that was occupying players' times wasn't actually coming to fruition. In other words, there's a lot of posturing, a lot of small fights, a lot of skirmishes, but there wasn't a lot of damage that was actually being done. That totally changes in August. As you can see, it pops up in Fountain. That brings the total up 8 trillion, and most of that, I think, you're going to see it as part of the Fountain campaign there. So it was solidly in August. From last time, we look at July. I'm going to bring you to this report here. This is Noisy Gamer, who keeps track of a lot of economics in EVE. Usually he looks at a lot of meta information, and his article in July took a look at some of the consequences of the last year, but also was looking at the imprint of the war, and you could see that it really wasn't happening. Like the total value destroyed was way down, and it was only at 30 trillion. But he also mentioned something that was very interesting here. There was no sign of players coming back either. The horn hadn't been blown for Goonswarm at this time, but you also had Not any kind of major uptick of what's called ISK Delta. That's ISK coming back into the game to as players reactivate their accounts. That's one of the things that we look for when we're looking to see if players are coming back to the game. Old players that have all this wealth that are dormant because they're gone from the game, either on break or they've left. You look to see how much money is coming back into the overall economy, and I think those numbers are published by CCP. And then you can kind of tell if players are actually reactivating, or if rich players are reactivating, or if money's coming back into the game from accounts being turned on again. And so there wasn't a big sign of that last month, but we'll see if that's the case for August when Noisy publishes
September.
his next report. Yeah.
For September.
No, for August. He hasn't done the September. He hasn't done the August report. This is the July report, which didn't see it. The horn was blown for Goon Swarm in August. So when we get this report in a few days, because it takes them a few days to analyze everything, we'll know if the horn did any good, or if people came to fight Goon Swarm as well. It works on both ends. Go ahead.
Okay. Also, I think we kind of looked over the destruction and domain being 2.2 trillion. That's probably because of Nanarja falling. Had a lot of destruction there as well.
Oh yeah, good point. But look at Hamatar; it's competing too. It's close to 2 trillion there, and I think that's all invasion damage. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the economic report and look at some of these other big numbers. Here we go. Total value destroyed, the forge. As you can see, the twin towers here, the fountain and the forge. Total mining. This is the next big story out of the economic report. We see that mining is actually really solidified in HiSec. As you can see, Sync Liaison, Metropolis, Domain, the Forge still on top there. Even a little bit on the Citadel here. And Lone Trek. These are squarely in Empire space. And seeing a huge domination over mining, which makes a lot of sense. It tracks with what we're talking about. There's a lot of mining opportunities in HiSec that are not just the usual belts that you see out there, but invasions themselves have brought opportunities for big mining to happen. You just have to time it right, have some protection, and know how to do it. But it's not just small mining anymore, or scarce mining through belts.
I also think we're seeing artificially low numbers in nullsec currently too because of the war. If you notice, a lot of the regions that normally post larger numbers are down tremendously just because of war. Esoteria, Delve, Fountain had decent amount of mining too before the war. So there's always going to be that. Although a lot of people have transitioned over to HiSec mining due to changes in the mechanics of the game.
Right.
Around mining.
Quick correction. I'm told the horn was blown in September. I think you were trying to correct me live, and I didn't catch it.
I tried to.
Thank you. I
ran
right over you.
It happens.
Okay, so we won't see the results of that for another 2 months or for a while. Yeah, the only group that's competing here, the only region that's competing for mining dominance is Oasa. It's a big story about Oasa. We'll look into that and their ratting and how high that is in just a minute.
But it's just not really surprising, right? Because Aerith, I believe this is one of the regions Aerith always pointed to as being a really good region for mining, probably better than Delve. He always speculated that if they were going to move from Delve, this is where they'd want to be.
Yeah, and the reason for that is that these systems overlap quite well. So from Oasa, you can protect many more systems. I believe it's over 100 systems that you can protect. They're all within jump range or light year range of your center point, which means if you put a bunch of super capitals there to protect an area, there is no better area than Oasa. So Delve sits over Delve, and it also sits over period basis to some degree, but I believe that's less systems than Oasa has. So that's interesting. Okay, let's have a look at... Hello, Gregorian. Thanks for joining us. Check your mic, please.
Hello.
Okay. We heard you. Thanks. All right, the NPC bounties in the middle here, you see by itself is a big blue 6.3 trillion in Oasa. That is NPCs destroyed. We've seen high numbers. We've seen them dominate the board actually for months now, but now they're the only one dominating the board. Delve is essentially slowed down and has been for a while actually, but really they've really come into their own recently. They only overtook the top spot for ratting, I want to say 2 months ago, maybe 3. When we were doing reports.
Right, and like I was saying earlier, the war has some of these numbers artificially low in other regions, which makes this stand out even more, right? So this definitely puts a magnifying glass on Oasa and Fraternity. So I think a lot of that has to do with it as well.
Right, we'd have to compare historical information against that 6.3. Rather than comparing it against its rivals now, we should compare historically to what it was doing before. And that way we can see if it pulled ahead or if everybody fell behind.
Don't get me wrong; those are huge numbers. That's a huge amount of writing going on.
Yeah. All right. Another interesting point we'll look at is because of the war. It's way down here at the bottom is peak concurrent numbers for EVE Online. This is how many players are on at the same time. We'll just take a look at Fountain there. Oops. You can see there's massive spires, massive peaks. And those peaks represent players in one system at one time, at one moment. And so clearly those battles were some of the biggest that we've seen, especially if you compare them to Aquarius, which last month wasn't doing much in comparison. Catch wasn't doing very much. That's staying actually. Catch is over here. There's nothing really that compares to these giant spikes, which show basically 2,000 to 4,000 players in systems at one time.
Right. This is the economic report that's kind of showing the majority of the Fountain campaign for the Pappy forces, and that's why we're seeing those spikes in Fountain on this report here.
Okay, let's run back to the, shall we say, elephant in the room. That is not total mining, but NPCs. That's Oasa's tower there. Let's talk about that. A lot of accusations been flying that nobody could really accomplish that. I mean, a fraternity itself that resides in Oasa is half the size of Goon Swarm, yet they're outperforming them by, well, more than double. So how is that? How is that possible? And clearly there's a war going on in Delve, which has shut down a lot of the ability for it to rat NPCs. But it brings up a big point that people like to talk about all the time is maybe there's automation involved here. Maybe players aren't even playing the game, but they've set up scripts on their computers to act like robots and manage all this income generation on its own. This is something that's highly looked down upon and even illegal in the game. People lose the right to play the game when they are caught doing this sort of thing. So with me now, I'm going to bring in the leader of Fraternity. Noraus is going to be with us here. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. But before we get to Noraus, I just want to read a couple things I thought were very interesting, and then I'll show a graph or two. There's a really good article from the Ancient Gaming Noob, great guy, and he writes this thing about who got banned for botting. And this was an article written last year. You might remember there was a big release of data that showed where people were banned from. And really, the conclusion that he reaches is that almost all the botting happens in renter space. And that tracks with something that was brought up. I'll read a couple quotes from Reddit. And that was that, I'll just read this. This is from Sir Squeeze from Rote Capel. And he writes in Reddit, it's more optimized approach than the Goon one. And he's talking about fraternity here. Now, I'm one of the biggest, most aggressive accusers of botting towards fraternity, but Oasa and other parts of Paragon under the umbrella are not the place to look for that. Branch, Tenal, Cobalt Edge, Outer Passage, and the Paragon Falls, all those rental areas are where bots really flourish. It's not the same reason that Delve isn't. You don't want to run your bots in the same space with all your real players. That's a point that he makes. And also, Ned Flanders 9000 from the Bastion writes, wait a minute. So people from a hardworking culture are ratting only 15% harder than the Goonies, and we all just assume they are cheating? Question mark.
Ned Flanders, I'm pretty sure he's not actually from the Bastion, but on Reddit he is flared as the Bastion.
Thanks for that correction. I wasn't sure. I should check that out.
His posting record is definitely does not look like the Bastion. It's pretty anti-Imperium often.
Okay, so that's just something that he could apply to himself. Okay, we'll get that straightened. Well, right now I would like to introduce Noraus, who's the leader of fraternity. How are you doing, Noraus?
Morning.
Morning. Nice clearing your throat there. So, as you know, you guys have been killing it in Oasa, killing NPCs, generating a ton of money. Can you tell us about that? How's that going?
See the pun. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, first of all. I just want to tackle the two most discussed topic people are talking about. And first of all is the 6-7 trillion ratting in Oasa, which I believe fraternity contributes over 90% of the value. Because we are not the only residents in that region, right? There are no values, and the other alliances in Winter Coalition live with us in Oasa. We have been consistent with this number for the last 3-4 months. And for the last few months, Oasa has been frequently within the top 10 violent regions in every 24 hours, if you check Dolan. Combined with these two facts, I think, we can all agree Oasa is actually a densely populated region and one of the most active regions in the game. Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Running the most effective umbrella, super cap umbrella, I'm sorry. Especially right now, when our war allies move their super carriers to the front line. We run this super cap umbrella for at least 18 hours a day and every day. So I have a dozen FCs scheduled to the exact hours who's going to take which shift. They don't have to be great FCs. As long as our intels are on point, they can drop super carriers with almost impunity. Because we are so deep in Zhong region and there's no NPC space around us. Also, thanks to my allies and friends, we have a pretty decent intel coverage about maybe almost every group in the game. So I know where they're gonna plan something or sneak in something. I don't trust the average member's personal judgment, and we have a pretty stiff requirements, punishments, etc. If your supers and oracles operate outside the green light, your corp would be fined. Like, if you die in a non-standard fit, that's an instant kick. If you don't have sign or cloaked outside of the jammer range, and you're kicked. It's very cruel but effective. The hunters now, after all this time, they have learned about what to expect in this region. So when they hunt, they may as well, start to avoid our region. You can see hunt super carriers hunting Cobalt Edge and just one-shotting nano-fit super carriers. Those do not exist or already died out in our region.
Right, because
As
they're
for because they're kicked, we have a pretty stiff requirements on that.
Mhm. So to summarize, you have scheduled FCs and you operate 18 hours a day. You have good control over your boundaries because people are fined or kicked if they're outside the boundaries. And no ship can die easily because if you have a terrible fit, you're eliminated from the group.
Correct. I believe it's a fault. The mechanics is a fault, in my opinion. That's why I hope CCP to add NPC clusters in every region, nullsec,
Mhm.
right? Might sound hypocritical to someone. Well, you're a block leader and you call for more risks in your nullsec space, because I believe FRT can cause more damage, benefit more from this for our active numbers. The MER is going to take a hit, that's for sure. We can net so much more from this. In our time zone, it's already pretty quiet. So anything that can bring us content, it's welcomed. For now, everyone in my time zone that we can hunt is hidden in some of the deepest, like very deep regions in the game. Parabases, Omist, Duckland. Like, if imagine if they have NPC regions, that'd be awesome for us too.
Yeah. So this is funny because it reminds me of something that Goonswarm says a lot. And they've also been accused of housing bots when they were generating a huge amount of money. And they said, look, we don't like the system. We're using it to show CCP that it's kind of broken. So make us play differently by changing the mechanics. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. Except Goonswarm might show that CCP botting is a serious problem in the game. What I want to show CCP is that RMT is a huge problem. Because after we done with Oasa, I think everyone now is clear why Oasa have this MER, why we deserve this MER. And let's talk about Brunch. Right,
Yeah.
this is a region directly managed by FRT. It's our rental program, okay? And I've seen two very popular opinions on the Reddit right now. One, that cheating is a Chinese gaming culture, and the other one is FRT leadership directly responsible for the botting in branch. I believe neither of them is right. Cheating, it's a human nature which can be discouraged and all corrected through regulations, through punishments, and countless monitors. We have found and kicked every corp or individuals that we can confirm that are bots. But either it doesn't matter if they are in fraternity proper or they are in a rental group. Cheating is not a Chinese culture. But earning real life money through video game, it's a very popular and profitable industry in China. That I can make sure of you. The average, I just searched for this on Google actually. The average monthly income for China is about $1,200 US dollars per month. And if you check the RMT sites, if you check the black market, if I remember correctly, it's about the same value of selling 180 bill ESK in game. So in other words, if you manage to earn and sell those ESK every month, you will have an average income per month, tax-free, working at home, no boss required, or whatever. This is the issue we have. Because people who have the incentive to repeatedly bot despite these punishments will eventually RMT, since that's so profitable for them.
Right.
We have found, after we kick these people, we have found they trying to join back with altered identities, with different discords, QQ slacks or whatever, and they're new out a new corp. This number of, I would say, professional players are growing in the game. That's the issue I want to show to CCP. Do you think fraternity leadership knowingly put these bottings anywhere in OAS or in branch? No, because CCP will deduct this amount of X from our wallet directly. If the renter pays something and they are a botting corp, CCP just remove the money from our wallet.
Right. So you can see a ton
Right,
of
so-
money disappear.
Yeah, shutting down this corps, it benefits us the most among all others. We are fighting this war. We are combating as your first line of defense. From infiltrating into our space because our space is safer to generate the asks they need. These RMTers contributing nothing, literally nothing to us, but negative wallets and the damaged reputations. I still remember. I just heard you talk about that when I come in. The pie chart of shame, which
Yeah.
is probably last year, right? About
About a year ago, June.
yes, it's historically banned character combined, and the first fraternity rental program, which is in Wiki Creek, I believe it contributed the third most, despite it already lasts for 2 years. Right after that, we basically constructed everything because it's caused so much damage to us already.
Mhm. So this
And-
chart. Oh, go ahead.
I just think, well, I don't know if you're allowed, but there's some real life politics a little bit.
Mhm.
The China and the board, the people are segregated from each other. They can't communicate directly or freely. So that creates a huge unknown distance, which eventually I think turn into suspicion, like right now, and animosity. I can relate that. I can think of that right now in the game. But unless CCP regional block this regional block China, they will have to learn more about us, right? We will be there will be negatives and positive impacts we can, but you can be sure we will have something of our marks. So I hope CCP can talk to more like with the Chinese players. We now have a Chinese CSM, Maria Taylor, which is a great start. I just believe that they need to know more about us and know more about the RMT industrial behind this.
Right. Which you see as the bigger problem in that it's so lucrative for them to do it.
Yes.
Okay. So are you seeing a problem with RMT in the Chinese community from your alliance, renter alliances, or other people's alliances that are affiliated with China?
In general, yes, because it's easier to find us. We speak the same language, we live in the same time zone, and it's just easier to come to our approach, come to our alliance, come to our space, and say, well, if I can rent the space from you. We can't do check for every alliance before they arrive, right? Before we accept them, we only survey after they join the alliance, and if after a certain amount of time they're safe, they still exist, safe from bang hammers, and we assume they're legit.
What about the accusation about fraternity specifically that areas that you rent in the north are more likely to have botters, let's say, because that's what they're complaining about here.
Yeah, as I told you, we have pretty limited amount of tools. People suggested me to check Dolan's for the exact rating number every 24 hours. That's how they suggest me to find out and identify and kick the bots. That's a
Yeah.
huge effort for the management. For now, we take evidences, we take reports from other players within the alliance. We monitor everyone's wallet transaction through ESI. So if CCP does something to their wallet, we will know. And then we will confirm, okay, this is a botting or RMT because it's punished by CCP, and we should immediately kick them.
Right. Because
That's
it's
the
proven.
only two. Yes, that's the only two ways we can control of. Outside of that, it takes usually 1 or 2 months before we find out this is an actual illegit RMT core. We
Right.
can't do that pre-check before they join.
Yeah, so I find it weird that people magically expect you to be able to know who's doing it in your territory. And there's no way for you to know that because it can't be proven until CCP verifies it, and that's when you can move on it.
Yes, essentially.
So you're actively policing your renter empire as much as you can, being a player.
what you mean by pleasing, but
Like, just making sure there's no RMT going on as much as you possibly can.
income directly and our reputation.
Sorry about that. I wrecked that with my watch answered a phone call. It was just some spam. Okay. Sorry about that if you had your sound cut off. Okay, let's change the subject here since we have you just for another minute or so. Can you tell us how the war is going from your perspective?
There's a timer in 20 minutes, and now I have to miss it because I have to go to work. But I think we're doing well in Curious. After yesterday, the U.S. time zone fight, we have proof that we are capable of dealing with Goonsworms, their tactics right now, which is a battleship doctrine and the carriers and facts on structures. It's nasty. It shows how much the advantage the defender have, but we are overcoming that. So we're going to clear more curious Fortizars, faction Fortizars, before we start the next move.
Yeah. Do you expect that Fraternity will get more involved in this war or less involved or maintain the same involvement as the war progresses closer to Delph?
That's a lot of complaints. 2 months is in the war right now, and I can hand count how many actual fights, proper engagements in this time zone. And people are getting impatient. They're complaining this is not a war for them because they can't participate unless they're willing to structure bash for initial time or for show timers every day. So I anchored a Fortizar in SVM, which is a Delph Purper, yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It will online in 6 days. So we will see if Ginsworm willing to take the fight. And yeah,
Wow.
there's not much else we can do except for anchoring Fortizars and stuff in our time zone. All the structures are timed to US. So even with very low ADM, it's still out of our reach. It used to be EU, so we entoast the XK tag SKZ, which is the first pair of bases I have, and was low ADM in EU TT. So we get a chance for that, but not for now.
Let me see that system again. So you anchored something in Delve in order to get more action because there's not enough action going on for your guys. Because
yeah, that's next to AQT.
What's the system that you anchored in?
SVM. SVM Tech 3K.
SVN Tech 3K. SVN Tech 3K. Doesn't come up. Unless I'm missing a letter in there. Thank you, SVM. I got it. I heard N. Okay, thank you. Thank you. SVM. Okay, so right here at the beginning. Oh, right there on the other side of the Aquarius gate of 8QT. Thank you.
Yep.
So what do you intend to do with that? So that Fortizar is you're daring them to try to take it out so that you can generate some content with them.
Basically only forcing the fight. This Fortizar doesn't give us any strategic value so far. And it would be at their advantage. They have supers and caps in range 1 minute away, and it's gonna be out of our way. They can gem the system. Everything in their favor, I hope they can fight.
Yeah. I see that you dropped a Keep Star in Ermelin, and you've dropped other Keep Stars. How many Keep Stars have you dropped in this war?
I personally dropped 6, I think, but not all of them are mine. Sometimes NC and PH, they gave me their Keep Stars for me to anchor in a safer time zone.
Oh.
In total, I think there are 12 or 14 Keep Stars so far.
Yeah. Wild. Have you been investing a lot of money in this war? Is this a big effort for you?
Definitely. 4 of those Keep Stars are from Fraternity, and we are beating the 5th. And yeah, we contribute a lot financially. And our members are all, ready for this fight. They put the death clones in PTCM. They will move along with us.
All right. Well, look forward to more combat in the coming weeks and months.
Yep,
Thank you, Noraus, very much for stopping by, giving us some of your time before you run off. Anything else you'd like to say?
Not so far. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Noraus. Bye. Okay, let's take a look at the war report here, where a Goonswarm Tatara was put past its armor timer in NDII TAC Q. I can find that one because I have it written down. It's right there in the middle of Aquarius, and we have a battle report for you on that one. I saw part of that fight. Did you guys see that fight?
I missed
I,
it.
I saw part of it. I wasn't in that fight, but it was Trash Talk Tuesday was covering it, and I was listening to Trash Talk Tuesday at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it looks like I don't know exactly how it happened, but there was dreads dropped on this Tartara, and there were counter dreads dropped, and then the ante was raised, and more dreads were dropped, I think, from Horde. So there was multiple groups involved. But in the end, it looks like the toll was 60% or 70% to 30%, with the Pappy Anaconda coalition coming out ahead. And I think a lot of Rokes, actually, I saw those get destroyed because they were tethered, and I think they were safe, but they decided to shoot at something and made themselves vulnerable.
From what I heard, it was they decided to shoot at Villy.
And that cost them a Roke fleet pretty much, because a lot of those got annihilated. Yeah, so we can look here. Villy did get killed. He was inside of a Redeemer. Not a Redeemer, a Revelation. Yeah, he was in a Dread. But really, it's very sparse. I mean, this is... Oh, look, there's Ron USMC. Hey, buddy. I think a lot of Naglfars got taken out, but if you look over here on the left, this Roke fleet just got wiped out. I think Brisk survived, but other than that, everybody, all his buddies died.
Yeah, the reason why Naglfars would have died more is because they tend to be higher priority targets than Revelations, the other preferred nullsec dread, due to it being easier to kill a Naglfar.
Yeah, better bet for your time. The Tatara, of course, is still there, and that timer will be coming up probably in the next day or so. And after that, it will be its final timer. But this was the armor timer. Slightly.
And the
Go ahead.
The armor timers are typically the ones most likely to get a fight.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's more true for staging structures than any others. So we still might see a fight over the hull timer. Most of the structure timers in Aquarius have been uncontested, aside from a few fights like last night's.
Yeah. I think Noraus was just saying that Goonswarm has a really tough combination with dreads and battleships. I think he's talking about those Rokes.
He was talking about their Baltic fleet, which is Triage Megathron.
Yeah, the faxes with the Megathrons, you mean?
Yeah. It's just that when you drop triage, you generally need to be able to resort to dreads if necessary, because dreads are the counter to caps like triage.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
This doctrine is it's not that great for deploying far away from your home space, which is why you don't really see PanFam using battleships but it is really good for a defensive doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the Imperium is using it.
Yeah, the Rokes have really good range.
Right. Okay, so we'll look for more fights continuing on. We need to move on to the weather report real quick. As you can see here, on the map, there is an electrical storm in Providence, and a second one inside of Pureblind. And the Providence also has a plasma storm And Vale has a plasma storm. And you can see right here, there's actually 2 storms right next to each other. That is a plasma and an exotic storm. So that's what's going on in that cluster. We want to see some storms overlap. You can also see in Providence, you have a couple storms there that also want to overlap. Again, that is an electrical storm and a plasma storm. And up here, it's an exotic and a plasma. Storm in Fountain is an exotic. I think that speeds you up, if I'm not mistaken. And the gamma storms are both in Tribute and down here in Catch. That's your weather report for metaliminal storms. Lastly, I want to give you some economic news and take a look at technetium. Looks like it's been sliding since July, but that is not the case for cobalt, which seems to be on a major upswing as of 2 days ago. So we don't know how long these upswings last or what's causing them yet. We haven't looked into it, but that's a pretty sharp upturn. So check that out. Everything else seems to be rather stable as far as moon minerals, with a couple or 3 minerals in a slow decline. So haven't seen major spikes for moon minerals. You would think there might be with shortages. Right, and that's our report today. Maddox and Gregorian, you guys have anything else you want to add?
Not that I can think of.
No, that's should be good.
Yeah. I'll look into why technetium is sliding down. Again, a lot of these numbers require really good expertise and macroeconomical eyes to figure out what is it that's causing things. Are there shortages? Are there surpluses that ran out? All these kinds of things. So it's almost impossible to know. We have to do an analysis and talk with multiple people to figure out what's influencing it. There's no direct correlation that we can find right off the bat, but we'll see. And we'll give you more economic news, and we'll tell you and give you context when we can on that kind of stuff. A couple more notes here. August active delta is negative 15 trillion, and that's a pretty large drop in the ISK delta, which is what we were talking about at the top of the show. Are people coming or going into the game? Is wealth being parked, or is wealth actually being reactivated? And it looks like a negative 43 trillion is money being parked. And that's an interesting clue. We'll look into it and see, but it's possible that that is people basically saying, I'll be back after the war, or something else. Who knows? We'll check it out and give you more information tomorrow on Talking in Stations. Thanks, everyone. We will see you next time.